welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining this webcast. By way of quick introduction, my name is Bob Rabbit. I am the VP of Managed Services here with ITS. And for those of you who may not know, ITS is an organization that has been around for about the past 15 years, and we focused really exclusively around enabling and supporting end user productivity as well as security. And today, what we're gonna go through is I'm going to talk about 3 ways to achieve the IT management outcomes that are really critical as it relates to, again, enabling both user productivity as well as protecting the the needs of the business and protecting that security. So happy that you're able to join us. Again, as a reminder, please submit any questions that you might have into the GoToWebinar application as we go through here, and again, we'll get those answered once the webinar is concluded. So to start out here, this is kind of a level set. I want to walk through and kind of set the stage here as it relates to why are we really talking about IT management, and ultimately why does ITS feel that it's necessary to challenge the status quo about how we go about achieving outcomes in the IT management world? And it really revolves around a couple of key ideas. The first being that, as you can see here, we are really in a post-single device era, and what we mean by this is, you'll say 8-10 years ago, maybe even as early as 5 years ago. There was a real, I would say, a general sense in the IT space that, devices are going away, right? We're gonna move to an era where nobody's carrying any devices with them. Everybody has an implant in their head or what have you, and there's not going to be as many devices, especially in the workplace, right? And in reality, we've seen the exact opposite happen. There's been an explosion of devices, and one of the core underlying reasons of that is there's been a shift in the attitudes and ways that people work. We'll talk about that here in a second, but the main concept here to keep in mind and truly understand is we're in a post-single device era, which means that as you think about managing your IT environment, gone are the days where you just have to worry about maybe a single desktop that your user comes in and starts working on at the beginning of the day and then goes home and that's it, right? I myself, as I sit here, broadcasting this webinar, I've got a laptop, I've got my mobile phone, I've got a tablet. Probably 1 or 2 other devices that I'm not even thinking about right now that I use in order to be productive, right, and to perform my job function. So, this idea that there's more out there to manage is becoming more and more real to, I think, to a lot of organizations, which is again why we feel it's important to change up the way people think about managing their environments here and delivering the outcomes that they're looking for, right? And specifically as it relates to ITS, and what we focus on is how is it organizations can both secure and manage those endpoints in an efficient and effective manner, right? Because as we talk with our customers, we see over and over and over and over again the IT teams and even to a certain extent, as IT becomes more ingrained with the business as a whole, they're just struggling to manage everything that's coming through the door, right? And we're talking even beyond the old days of BYOD. It's just we're even beyond that, right? It's just kind of this chaotic ramp up of devices, and it's only going to get worse, right? As we think about again, playing buzzword bingo here, the Internet of Things. The amount and number of devices that need to be managed and secured is only increasing over time. So that's a big challenge, and one of the primary factors that we're focused on to try to help organizations get ahead of this. So let's talk about why this is important, right? Why is this so critical? So if we think about, again, kind of similar to that, that mindset of several years ago, where where folks thought, well, we're going to have a fewer number of devices, and the opposite has happened. There's been another trend, and this is outside even the IT world. This is more of a generational attitude that's been coming into the forefront here more and more over the past few years. And that's this idea that kind of the best way I can relate it is to think about the world of gaming, right? So hopefully you kind of follow along with me here. But in the world of gaming, there's an advent of games like Grand Theft Auto and Minecraft and a few others that have really changed the way people interact and play games, right? They're no longer these side-scrolling, very structured, highly controlled, Super Mario style games, and we've moved more to an open world, right, where the gamer is allowed to interact however and wherever they feel necessary, right? There's maybe a broad storyline, but they're not necessarily stuck into that, and they can interact and work with that game and play that game however they want. That attitude has started, and it's actually past the starting point now. I mean, we're well into this as we think about, again, the millennial generation and even Generation Z that's coming up here in a few years as well. And it's this attitude that I want to be able to interact not just with my gaming environments, but with my whole IT experience, my whole technology experience. I want to have a lot more freedom than has been traditionally provided, right? So there's this generational attitude that's going beyond not just do we have more devices to manage, but I want to interact in ways that I feel necessary or are important to allow me to get my work done, right? So again, this is likely not new to a lot of you, right? It is more of just again a re-emphasis and an articulation here of why this is so important, why it's so important to continue to be able to manage this user experience, because it's really about the user experience. It's no longer about the device, really. I mean, at the end of the day, a device just sitting by itself isn't making you money, right? It's not making an organization productive. It's the individual that's utilizing that piece of technology, that endpoint, to do their job. That's really the key activity, right? So what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to enable that productivity again by well managing those devices and the experience around them. And again, as we can see here, enabling our users or our constituents to work where they want, when they want, and how they want. Okay. So whether we like it or not, as IT professionals, this is reality today, and it's becoming even more of a reality as we move forward. So these, as we think about these productive users, as we like to refer to them, right, and all of their devices, there's kind of a dark side, if you will, and if you think about it, the more devices, the more control points that you have, again, in your environment or outside of your environment that are being utilized in order to enable users to be productive, the greater or the larger attack plane that you have to protect as well, right? So again, we can just, I'm not going to read these stats to you, but you can get a sense here of what of the scale that we're talking about is, securing and managing those devices is just as critical and even more critical than it has always been, right? Because the temptation is to think, well, the device doesn't really matter, right? All that really matters is apps and data. And there's a lot of truth to that, but really when you think about it, at the end of the day, there's still those key underlying fundamental ideas and activities that need to go on in order to help organizations reduce risk on at the same time. So what does this look like? If we, the best way that we've been able to articulate this and really think about, what's the new job of IT professional these days, and it's really to live this balance, right, and deliver this balance to your organizations, and that is, on the one hand, enabling productivity while also ensuring protection, right? And this is a huge challenge, right, because these two, and you can see it here in the diagram, productivity and protection, in most cases and in most organizations that we deal with, we talk with and work with hundreds of customers, this comes up over and over and over again, right? The security side of the organization is pushing for stronger and more stringent controls and more policies and procedures, and the productivity side of the house is pushing for freedom, right? We need to provide more services. We need to provide more freedom to our to our users, right? So it's really not just a teeter-totter. It's also a tug of war, right? With internally within the organization, you're being pulled in multiple directions here. So again, it's a really big challenge. And as you think about this, there's another aspect of not just enabling productivity and ensuring protection, but you also have to think from an ongoing management perspective, and you kind of think of it in the same way as this teeter-totter here, is how do I promote, another way to think about it is how do I promote and ensure operational excellence and predictability, right, while also executing on strategic projects, right? Executing on those wildly important goals while also making sure that the whirlwind, so to speak, is being executed on, right? So again, some really interesting and serious challenges that need to be addressed. So let's talk about the specific outcomes and demands that are being placed on IT in order to enable, again, as we mentioned, that productive and secure experience for our end users. So at a high level, we've got more devices to inventory, right? Again, I think most of us should know as IT professionals, knowing what's out there, what software applications data is on those devices is really critical and important, right? So you've got more devices to manage than you ever did before. It's not going down. The number is going up and going up exponentially, not in a linear fashion. Along with that, you're managing more individuals that are no longer on premise. Again, more and more and more as we think about, again, those millennial generations and even Gen X, they want that freedom and ability to work where they want and when they want, which means they're not necessarily going to be on your internal VPN, or they're not going to be in your physical office many times. You got to figure out, how do we manage and secure our users, whether they're here in our physical premises or they're out and about doing their job, right? Patching and application management as well. Again, these problems don't go away, they only increase. Again, the more devices you have, the more remote they are, the more you have to do those security aspects in terms of patching. Protecting endpoints from more advanced threats. Gone are the days of the script kiddies that are kind of doing broad-based, somewhat easy to detect attacks, and now we're dealing with very advanced threats that are very targeted to specific individuals and not just large organizations. This is kind of the other key that's so important here, is everything that we're talking about is not isolated to just the very large organizations out there, the Fortune 500s and large governmental organizations. Every organization from SMB all the way up to to very large enterprise are dealing with these issues. And then finally, keeping confidential data protected wherever it lives. We all know and have heard about big data, right, and how important it is, and how to secure and protect that is important. That's one aspect. But even the mundane or routine things that we need to keep protected, from a liability perspective and a competitive perspective, with the more devices that you have out there and the more mobility that you're enabling within your user base, means that job of keeping your confidential data protected is even more important, right? So the thing to take away from this talking point is that all of these activities and outcomes and demands that you may have thought are becoming less and less important are actually becoming more and more important. It's kind of that counterintuitive balance that we thought, hey, we're as we mature in IT and things improve and we start introducing AI and advanced analytics and various other processing capabilities, all these old problems are going to go away. They really haven't. They've only gotten worse in a lot of ways. And so if you look at the flip side of not delivering these outcomes and not being able to provide that experience, there's some really serious risks here, right? As we think about software compliance risk, again, an age-old problem in IT. You know, everybody's worried about when's that next audit coming from, from my software vendor, right? How do I ensure that I'm not over deploying or under deploying, right? Patch compliance. We're going to talk about that a lot more in detail in a minute. But again, the more devices and the more variety that we're talking about here, the harder it is to achieve that patch compliance. NPS. I haven't really talked about this too much, but net promoter scores are becoming more and more important within organizations, especially as you think about the CIO, CEO level, executive levels. More and more, they're being measured on their internal NPS, right? How happy, how satisfied, and how enabled are their constituents in performing their duties and interacting with with the IT world. Okay, and so that's becoming more and more important. Again, gone are the days that we can tell our user base, here's your IT experience, take it or leave it, right? We've got the iron fist and we can deliver things how and where we want. No, those days are gone, right? It's not that they are going to be gone; they're gone, and now more than ever, that internal happiness quotient, if you will, or net promoter is critical. And then again, I was speaking about previously, data leakage and security breaches again are all results of again not achieving those outcomes and not focusing on achieving those on a consistent and regular basis. Okay, so the problem here, if I were to sum this up, the problem is that IT management teams are really bogged down. At the end of the day, this is what we're talking about here, is that IT professionals, more and more is being asked of us. Again, our jobs are not getting easier, they're not getting more simple, they're getting more complex, and a lot of that is due to, again, as we've talked about, and hopefully I've beaten the drum over and over here, is that you're being asked to do more and more, and everything is becoming critical, right? So the mistake that we see, and this is where we're going to start talking about how do we break out of this cycle, right? And what are the specific paths to again achieve those outcomes while also being able to sleep at night. The main problem that we see here is that many organizations make the mistake that this is just the status quo, right? It's the same old IT life cycle, and so all we need to do is go buy another tool, or we need to hire maybe a couple more folks, or do some process improvements, and the problem will go away. Again, that mentality is not going to work here in this new age of user productivity. Okay, so let's talk about really some brass tacks here. What are the possible paths forward in achieving achieving that nirvana, if you will, of enabling user productivity while ensuring protection? And this is again going to be very, very specific. This gets down to the how and why to move forward. First option here is to stay with the status quo, right? This is a little tongue-in-cheek. I will fully admit it, but it does occur, and that is to just do nothing, right? Kind of ignore the problem, assume that, hey, this new cloud service or whatever it is that you're implementing is going to solve all the problems. Just kind of stick your head in the sand and continue to move forward. And before you think that I'm exaggerating here, I'll tell you a brief story that happened to me a couple of years ago, where I was working with an organization, a national level organization. So this was not an SMB. This was a very large enterprise account or customer around one of the kind of the subcomponents around enabling user productivity and security. Software asset management. So we went in to have an initial conversation, and we were doing some discovery here with one of the IT leaders within that organization. And as we were going through and talking about, okay, well, if you really want to deliver the outcomes and implement the asset program that will truly achieve the level of outcomes we believe you need, here are the steps that you need to take. And he just looked at us across the table and said, you know what, that's all great, but I'm looking to get a D- in asset management. I'm just looking to get by. Now that's an extreme example. It is an absolutely true example. Again, this is not something that I'm making up, and it was kind of shocking at the time, but it was true. So you know what? He basically was asking for status quo. I just need to check a box that I have this asset management thing, and move on because I really don't care about it. So while while we really don't view this as a real option for organizations that want to survive moving forward, it does happen, and it is an option. Option 2 is a much more typical scenario that we see our customers deal with day in and day out. And this is really the second, again, as we mentioned, kind of the first option that most organizations we deal with think of, and that is, you know what? We need to manage more devices. We need to get our patch management much more in compliance. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go hire some people, right? Or we're going to go do some staff augmentation. We're going to get some training, and we're just going to handle this thing ourselves, right? And we're going to do effectively what ITS refers to as we're going to scale up our in-house program to handle this particular activity or this particular outcome. However, in our experience, scaling up your in-house program does not always guarantee the outcomes that you're looking for. And so I'm going to walk you through a scenario of why that is, because you may be, again, very skeptical at this point, saying, no, Bob, we've done this for years and years and years. It's very easy. It's a new IT initiative. We just scale up in-house, get some training, get some knowledge transfer, and we're good to go. Again, not only, very rarely does that guarantee the outcomes that you're looking for, and here's why. Let's kind of talk through a scenario of what we see. Again, in our experience as an IT services provider, we live this day in and day out. This activity that we're looking at here. So in this example, and what we're talking about, when there's a new initiative or an update that or a new strategic objective that's been handed down, and again, I'll continue to harp on patch management. Say there's an initiative to improve patch management within the organization. The typical scenario that we run into, and we do this every day, it is a day in and day out, is we get contacted from an organization and say, hey, listen, we've got this patch management problem. What are the solutions out there that we can implement to get us where we're looking for? And we say, okay, well, let's sit down, let's do some scoping. Let's do an assessment, build out an implementation and knowledge transfer project, and let's sit together hand in hand and get this thing rolling. And we do that. It's a successful project. We launch this solution, design the processes, and the customer achieves the outcomes that they're looking for. However, inevitably, and this happens at a very high rate, a very high percentage, we get a call sometime later, right? So we're either, as we, because we like to keep and maintain, obviously, relationships with our customers, we're either checking back in periodically, or the customer calls us back at some point in the future, and we have a discussion about, hey, that patch management program and that we put in place, all the processes that we put in place, the tool that we implemented, the knowledge transfer that we delivered to you, how's that going? 9 times out of 10, and it's likely not an exaggeration, is they are no longer achieving the outcomes to the level that they desired. Again, something has gone wrong. We'll talk about the reasons for that here in a second. One of the main reasons being, again, typically most IT organizations, and from a business perspective, they just say, well, just go add this to the existing team. Well, the team continues to get bogged down with other activities and critical actions, and they don't have the time, right, or the energy or the knowledge, right? So again, the ability to achieve those outcomes diminishes over time. And another reason here is that really most organizations do not have a stringent, or even a way, even if they have defined SLAs, right, internally within the organization, they have no real way of enforcing those SLAs. Yeah, at the end of the day, if it really gets bad, they can let somebody go or reassign them, but they really don't have a way to manage and enforce those SLAs. So what happens? Somebody finally pays attention and says, you know what? either they get breached, a security event that happens. Again, if we're taking the example of patch management, and hey, listen, this thing isn't working anymore. We need to go out and get some help. So what do? They go, these organizations, they go, again, contact us, and we go through that. We go through that cycle. It's like, you know what, your system hasn't been looked at in X number of months. You need to make these changes, and these changes. And oh, by the way, maybe you need a new tool, or maybe you don't. In most cases, you don't. It just needs some TLC, and we get you back on track. What happens? The cycle continues, and again, this happens over and over and over and over again. In spite of the best efforts and the best intentions of our customers, because it's not as if they don't want to achieve the outcomes, right? Everybody wants to achieve and maintain these outcomes. It's just the cycle continues. Somebody gets let go, a key resource gets reassigned. Whatever the case may be, is those outcomes, again, they eventually diminish over time. So, talking about why this happens, right? What are some of the key reasons that over time these outcomes start falling off, right? And it's very difficult for many organizations to achieve simply by scaling up their in-house program. Underestimation of the team required to manage that, right? Again, if we've done our job as a services organization, and during the project, we've tried to provide as best guidance as possible on the resources that are needed. But whether that advice is heeded or not, or key individuals leaving, there's a lot of different aspects there. But underestimating the team that's truly needed to deliver that outcome happens over and over and over again. Boiling the ocean, that's that second point there. Trying to do too much too fast, right? Let's go get this entire. We need to solve the entire asset management, systems management, risk management problem. Let's go solve that all tomorrow. So you're trying to achieve too many outcomes too quickly, which means you're splitting up your attention and nothing gets done to the level that it needs to. Immature processes, again. This is huge, right? You get that initial level of process, but then you don't take it to the next level. Tools aren't being maximized. This is again a classic issue that we see. You get the bare minimum, right? We go in and help organizations. Okay, this is phase one, right? We get phase one implemented, get it up and running, but you don't take it to the next level and fully utilize the solution set that has been brought in to help as part of as part of delivering that outcome. And so then again, over time, you effectively have shelfware, right? You're using 2% of the total capability of whatever tool set that you're utilizing. You're also, again, being bogged down in mundane routine tasks. You're spending more time managing and maintaining the management platform than you are actually delivering the outcomes, right? And then finally, no plan for ongoing maturity, which is, again, you don't have that cadence for, okay, again, as we mentioned, this is phase one. How are we going to get to phase two, and how are we going to continue to address and keep focus on ongoing maturity improvement, not just managing and maintaining the status quo. So those are really kind of the issues and the reasons that we see, again, kind of that project scale up in-house scenario fail over time. It can be successful, but we see this very, 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 very often. So that kind of leads to the third option, and this is where we talk about the option of considering a managed service, right? And again, the idea of a managed service is not new in the IT world. Fully admit that. This is not as if I'm coming out here with a crystal ball and saying, hey, listen, there's this thing you've never heard of, and it's called managed services. What I am saying though is, from an organizational perspective and a strategic perspective, IT organizations, if they truly want to deal with this new wave or this new era of user productivity, it's really time to figure out how do we partner with the right organizations to achieve those outcomes. Okay, so managed service, applying the right level of managed service and partnering with that organization allows you to achieve a couple of really key key points. One is avoiding the investment of scaling up in-house. Again, we'll talk about that here a little bit more in a minute. But there is a large investment in again, hint, it's more than just hiring people. There's a large investment in truly scaling your organization in order to deliver these outcomes. Offloading operation and financial risk. This is another big one. As you think about scaling up in-house, basically what you're saying is, we're going to continue to maintain the operational and financial risk if something goes wrong. Okay, reaching desired outcomes faster, right? Hopefully by utilizing a managed service provider, they're going to bring to the table things that allow you to reach those desired outcomes much more quickly, and then enabling that outcome or knowing that outcome is guaranteed over time, right? This is going back to that whole discussion I had about guaranteeing SLAs. Again, internally, while you may be mature as an organization and have SLAs defined, your ability to enforce those is actually fairly limited. Beyond, again, like I said, potentially having to let a resource go or reassign them, that's about the level that you can get to. Whereas if you're working with a managed service provider, their reputation is on the line, right? Now, not only can you fire that customer, you can spread bad news about that, or fire that managed service provider. You can spread bad news about them. You can impugn their reputation. You can also get, typically there's financial impacts there as well that again help you guarantee those outcomes, right? You have a lot more mechanisms when you're interacting with a managed service provider, at least the right managed service provider, than you do trying to achieve that in-house. And then again, this can't be overstated. And I know it's again, I realize this is something that many companies say and they talk about it, but it's really back to the idea of where are you strategically placing your bets, right? Am I focusing my in-house team or my in-house resources on the day-to-day routine tasks, or am I focusing them on high-value strategic objectives that again are going to enable my company to make more money, to be more efficient, to deliver on the ultimate objectives of what that business is entailing, right? So, for example, I don't know how many of you, and this is not a customer of ours, so I'm not promoting any particular brand, but it's a really interesting story. If any of you shop at Sam's Club, one of the things that they've started rolling out over the past few months is this click to buy option. So they've got an app where you can walk around a Sam's Club store, scan items into your basket, and you don't even have to go to the checkout lane. So this is beyond self-checkout. This is actually you scanning, making the purchase directly in the cart, and then going to and then obviously as you exit the store, they'll still verify that what you said you purchased is what is in your basket. But that's an example where by freeing up their IT resources from some of the day-to-day, mundane activities, they were able to really deliver a very strategic business outcome, which is enabling, again, their constituents, their customers, to interact and purchase products in a much more efficient, effective way. So there's a real kind of a real impact there on that business. So again, just kind of an example of placing your bets in the right way. So as you think about managed services, it's really a great way to avoid this this historic cycle of getting to the outcome, not achieving the outcome, parachuting someone in, getting the outcome back up and running, and then continuing the cycle, and really moving to not just achieving that outcome, but achieving and exceeding that outcome over time. So as an example here, we've got a customer that we started working with about 2.5 years ago, where when we walked in, they had a real problem as it related to patch compliance. And not to put too fine a point on it, but they were below 50% patch compliance. They just, again, it's not that they didn't pay mental assent to the importance of patch management, But it just, again, it got caught in the whirlwind. They had other things going on. They were migrating operating systems. They were trying to centralize IT functions, and patch management just didn't rise to the occasion, if you will. So they were really struggling. So we came in as a managed service and partnered with them and said, hey, listen, let us take that off of your plate. Let us help manage that outcome and deliver back to you a guaranteed patch compliance level. And so that's what we did. Within the matter of 4 months, we took them from below 50%, I want to say it was 43 or 45% patch compliance. We took them from there to 95% patch compliance in under 4 months. And since then, we have not dropped below 95% patch compliance. And in fact, we're averaging closer to 98% patch compliance in an ongoing basis now. Right. So again, that's an outcome where that organization now, they're not worried about how am I patching my devices and who's doing what and what happens if something goes wrong. We're offloading all of that operational financial risk onto ourselves and delivering that outcome back to them in a consistent way, an efficient manner that allows them to again continue to focus on other activities. One of which has been mergers and acquisitions. They've gone through a lot of organizational changes as they've incorporated new new companies that they've purchased, managing those devices. It's really helped them out in a big way. Now, just a quick point, as I mentioned some specific numbers to you as a quick aside. I mentioned 4 months. That's not necessarily normative in terms of how long it will take a particular organization, but at the same time, if you're thinking 4 months is a long time to improve patch compliance from, say, the 45th percentile up to 95%, you have to consider also that their patch compliance, it wasn't just that for a single month their patch compliance level was 40%. It was years of patches. It was probably 2 years worth of patches at that point that they were behind. So we were able to offload the burden of them trying to figure out, okay, how do we move this mountain and not just get up to patch compliance, but address years of patches. We worked through that process and managed to maintain that for them, right? So that we were achieving the outcomes, but not flipping a light switch to the point that it would hurt or cause major chaos and disruption within the organization as well. So kind of a key aspect there. So you may be thinking at this point, okay, that's great. I've looked at managed services before, but really at the end of the day, it's expensive, right? I could go hire 3 people for the same price of a managed service. Why would I look at managed services? Why is that really worth it? And the first question that I ask, any organization that brings this question up, because it's a valid question, right? Is you look at it initially. If you look at the cost of a managed service versus a true managed service, I'm not talking about staff augmentation here. A true managed service, versus going and hiring. You can't see me use my air quotes here, but using my air quotes of just going and hiring a couple of people. There's a big delta there. And again, as I mentioned, one of the first things I ask our customers to consider is, well, let's think about that for a second. Is that really the skill set and process? Is that really something that you want to invest in, right? And is delivering patch compliance, as an example, I'll continue to use that as an example, is delivering patch compliance and all of the technical know-how and processes and all of that, is that really a skill set and operational activity that you should be investing in as an IT professional, as an organization, right? You're effectively saying we want to be the best at not just delivering patch management as an outcome, but we want to be the best at that process, right, and the solutions around that process. So you got to consider that it's typically this is not enabling innovation either. Again, more and more CIOs, directors, managers, what have you, they're pushing for innovation. They're not pushing for status quo, right? Let's just keep and manage and maintain our day-to-day operations. Everybody's being asked to do more, and a lot of these routine, day-to-day, important, critical outcomes get in the way of enabling that innovation. And at the end of the day, if you really talk to your technical folks, especially the senior ones, many of the outcomes that we've talked about today are they're not really excited about it, right? Again, you'll get a couple of nerds, so to speak, that really still get geeked out about patch management and how to deliver patches and all of that. But at the end of the day, most of your people, they really don't want to deal with those operational day-to-day activities, right? So there's a real challenge there in motivating your resources as well. The other thing to consider when it comes to scaling up in-house and saying, well, hey, I can just go hire some folks, is you have to consider the other costs here: finding, managing, incentivizing those FTEs, right? Again, as I mentioned before, as you look at the IT industry today, IT unemployment is very, 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 very low. We hear it in the news every day. It is very difficult to get qualified, best of breed IT professionals these days. It's just very, 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 very difficult. So by saying, listen, we're going to do this in-house, you're also signing yourself up for not just the cost of hiring that individual, but finding, managing, and maintaining those individuals, right? You're also effectively signing yourself up to consulting projects where you need to get this thing off the ground. You're typically not going to have the knowledge in-house, so you're going to need to go get that help. You're also going to need a support contract, right? And then periodic, as we saw in the loop previously, periodic consulting services projects to, again, check on the health of the system and the processes, provide remediation, maybe do some re-enablement of the team, documentation, what have you. Again, you're signing yourself up for a lot more than just going and hiring someone and say, hey, this is your job. So that's kind of those are really the three options. And again, as a quick reminder, do nothing, scale up in-house, or consider a managed service that provides outcomes are really your three main options for achieving the outcomes that you're looking for. So we're going to transition here and do the shameless ITS plug here and talk about what does ITS bring to the table in helping you break free of those routine activities and deliver those critical outcomes to your organization. So the first thing that we bring to the table, and really any good services provider should be bringing this to the table, is fine-tune IP, right? The intellectual product, processes, automation, high-caliber people, right? So these are all things that we bring to the table because this is our bread and butter, right? Well, I mentioned just previously in a few slides ago that most folks internally in your organization and other organizations don't really want to deal with or care about, say, managing and maintaining your endpoint protection tool. We eat, sleep, and breathe that, right? We love that. That's our livelihood, right? Our folks are the ones that are spending 50, 60 hours a week figuring out how to be the best at those specific outcomes, at those specific tool sets. And so we're spending the necessary time, not just to be the best, but to also to continue to improve and mature those skill sets and make ourselves even more efficient, right? Because we're incentivized to do that, right? The more efficient and effective we can do, the better the better service we're going to be able to provide our customer. The more, frankly, the more we're going to make it as an organization as well, right? We're not going to hide that, but it's really in our best interest, to be those experts and to continue to fine tune that. Again, typically not something, unless you're a very large organization that's decided that they're going to have a center of excellence, is not going to be able to maintain over time. The next thing is really collective intelligence. This is another really key advantage and key that we bring to the table, and you should be expecting from us, right? Is this collective intelligence, in that we're not just going out and picking somebody up off the street and then dedicating them to your environment and saying, okay, good luck, here's a couple of manuals. No, what we bring to the table is an entire organization that is laser focused on those critical outcomes. And so we have a team and a collective intelligence that we can draw on. This isn't just one person who kind of knows a tool and has kind of been enabled on it. We've got an entire organization that's purely focused on delivering these outcomes and this technology. which again allows us to deliver those results that we've talked about in a lot more expedited fashion, as well as optimize those outcomes a lot more quickly as well. Again, typically things that are very difficult to do in the traditional either staff aug or a project-based scale-up in-house scenario as well. So to kind of wrap this up here from a key capability perspective that ITS brings to the table, again, is our deep expertise in enabling both the productivity and protection of users. Again, this is what we eat, sleep, and breathe day in and day out. We know how to manage and maintain these tools. We know how to manage and maintain processes and achieve those over time. We've got a reputation for this. And again, key here is we're bringing a holistic team approach to this, to the table. This is not, a one-off. Let's just have somebody, take care of this on the side. We're bringing an entire team to the table here to deliver outcomes to your organization. So, final wrap up here. In terms of how you can interact with ITS, and we highly encourage you to contact us and ask about more. We've really got two sides of the house. One is the advisory and professional services or consulting services. Again, there's still a large number of organizations that are not ready to consume a managed service, or it doesn't make sense. And they need that one-off help, and we're here to help you with that, right? I'm not here to diminish it and say you should never consider, getting someone to help you, advise you on how to achieve a particular outcome. We've absolutely got those services, but then on the flip side, we've also got managed services, which is primarily what I was here talking about today, where again we can simply offload those outcomes and help you achieve those over time. So if you'd like to hear more, or you'd like to know more about who ITS is, what we do, and how we can help you, please visit our website, itsdelivers.com, and download our insight papers. We also provide workshops and conversations that we can have with you to help you understand how to navigate these these outcomes and really achieve what you're looking for. So again, thank you and have a great day.